Hey guys and gals, welcome back to the Wild Courage podcast. Today, I want to start out by saying I think I get so many messages about from gals, from women who listen to the podcast and are encouraged by it, not only by the stories, but what's crazy is how many women say I can understand my husband so much better having listened to these vulnerable men share. So I thought it would be super fun to bring on Millie Collum today. Thank you so much for jumping on here with me.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, so Millie is Britton's wife, and Britton's been on, I think, 3 or 4 times probably. And if you haven't listened to Britton's story, you should jump back and listen to his. But Millie and Britton are great resources and great friends of Wild Courage and have been so supportive. Britton's been to all of our retreats and events, and Millie's been the one at home while he gets to come on mission with us. So it's such an honor to get to have you on and jump into your story. The kind of the one of my thoughts this last year, and I haven't done it very well this year, is to invite more women into this space to kind of give your story, but also perspective, I think, for men. Because, like I said earlier, like so many women have reached out and are like, wow, I really appreciate these stories because it's helping me understand more how my husband thinks. And so I thought it would be fun to have some more gals on from time to time. And again, this is all about hope and story, and for us all to try to figure out this messy thing called life. So are
For
you
sure.
we'll just jump in. So are you from, I know you currently live in Oklahoma, but is that where you're from?
I am. I was born and raised in Oklahoma. Britton was raised in the eastern part of the state. I was raised in the western part of the state. They look totally different. So
Yeah.
he was surrounded by trees and woods, and I was. You didn't see a tree for miles. So
Oh
yes,
dang.
I call it dry bones out there in western
Yeah.
Oklahoma. But yeah. Hmm.
Where
Yeah.
you have siblings?
Oh man, yes. I am one of seven, was raised one of
Oh
seven.
wow. I didn't
And
know
then
that.
I have one half sister. Yes. Yes. So I have a huge family.
Where are
Huge.
you in the birth order?
I'm right in the middle, three older, three younger. And there are three
Middle
boys,
child.
four girls. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
7. That's a handful.
Yes. Six within 10 years. So we're all super close. Yes.
So by the time the older ones had the little ones, you guys were very involved with helping out probably with the babies.
Yes, for sure. We love babies. My family still loves babies, and we're all super comfortable with them. But yeah, have learned a lot. I think we kind of raised each other and
You had
parented
to.
each other. Yes. And
Yeah.
so
I mean, son.
yeah. So even as, excuse me, even as adults, I think we still kind of parent each other, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you are you still relatively close with all of your siblings?
I am. We don't see each other super frequently. They all moved to Western Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas, and I'm the only one that stayed in Oklahoma. But we still are really intentional of getting together about twice a year. And so, yeah,
Nice.
we're pretty close. Yes. So
What
grateful for them.
what did your dad do? How did he support 7 kids?
Yeah, he was a home builder when I was young and then would train horses in the evening. So he would build houses during the day. He also had a carpet store. And then he always had outside horses that he would bring in and train. And then after about high school, he in the oil bust in Oklahoma, nobody was building homes. And so he became a grant writer, kind of got more office jobs after that.
Was he still
Worked.
riding outside horses much?
No, after the oil bust, we sold pretty much all of our horses, which was kind of a pivotal moment in my life too. But
I bet that
Yes.
was devastating growing up with them. And then did you
Yes,
like
very
move to
much so.
town or something?
We did. That's part of our story too. Yes, when I was about 12, there was just so much life transition that happened between 12 and 14. And we moved in town, left a really crazy church that I was grew up in, and sold horses. So it was just
Everything
complete
changed.
shift, everything. Yeah,
Yeah, and when you're going through that, because I went through a lot of those transitions, we always had horses, but moved around a lot. And in the time, it was hard, but it was amazing to look back on it and see how pivotal it really was, and how it affected us more in hindsight than it did in the moment, and kind of helped shape us to who we really become in those formative years, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. Like after I've done my work, I can look back and think those 2 years have just like it set the trajectory for the
Yeah.
next 2 decades. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
for
was high
sure.
school life like for you?
Oh, wow. Well, I was, yeah, high school. I was pretty, yeah, part of the story was between those 12 and 14 years, 15 were probably my wildest times, which I know
Really?
sounds crazy, but I was
Early.
just super young. Yes, experimented with drugs. Um, I was, yeah. And so by the time I hit high school, had zero self worth, and but had really there's like a supernatural part around God really rescuing me from the drug scene. And so then I continued to drink and was pretty promiscuous, to be honest,
Mm,
but really dove into basketball just to stay out of more trouble than I knew I could get in if I, yeah, wanted to. So played, we were from a really small town. So girls basketball was the only thing a girl could do in that town.
yeah.
And so just stayed busy doing that and worked. I worked all the time. We all did. We all worked since we were 10, 11 years old. So
Yeah, well,
yeah.
when you have a family that big, I think it's probably just so overwhelming. I know,
Mm-hmm.
just in for my wife and I, like keeping track of that many kids and being intentional. Like, of course, your parents were probably doing the best that they knew how to do with the skills
Absolutely.
they had and the tools that they had or didn't have.
Yeah.
So always lots of grace there. But yeah, you could probably just blend in and do whatever with that many of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was, yeah, my poor parents. Yes. They had
Yeah.
no idea. We were so, and I was sneaky. Like I knew how to lay low. And if you just don't cause a scene, you won't be seen. And so I knew how to get away with a lot more than my siblings that lived out loud. And
Yeah.
so that was, yeah. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just kind of did whatever we wanted to do.
That's interesting. I love how sports, like I feel like without sports I probably would have went down I mean I went down the wrong path, but it took me longer to get to it. At least in high
Yeah.
school, like you kind of had to toe the line. To be
Yes.
eligible, you had to have it, at least a 2.0. So there was some effort that you had to put
Yes.
into grades for me anyway, and then if you have a good coach that's involved,
Mhm.
there's some healthy boundaries and in sports that you don't get just by being in school.
Yeah,
Sports
for
brings a
sure.
lot more structure and responsibility and accountability. So yeah, I love that you found that also. Yeah,
Me
I don't
too.
know where I would have ended. I would have probably been went on the same path, but just a lot sooner. I
Yeah.
didn't get in too much trouble in high school.
Yeah. No, I got married super young. So, yeah, my wildest years were in junior high, which is
Dang.
insane to think about. But yeah,
So
terrifying.
when so you got married super young,
Hmm.
is it somebody you grew up with and knew like in high school or
No, again, just had zero self worth. and grew up pretty poor. And like I said, have been working really hard since I was like 10, 11 years old. We started, chopping cotton then, and then just took jobs, whatever. And so I went to work for an investment broker there in town that was, yeah, 20 years older than me. And
How old were
yes,
you when you started dating?
I was 17,
And he was 37?
38. Mm-hmm.
Wow. How did you hide
Yes,
that from your parents?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely, I did. Yes. And so
that's crazy.
yeah, and he was very successful, financially successful, traveled. What he loved to travel, mostly internationally. And that was super intriguing to me just because of the way we were raised. We were raised really isolated up until about 12 or 13 years old. So, really had a desire to see the world. So, that was attractive to me. And yeah, so he pursued, and I was honestly thought this would be an amazing life. And so 2 years later, we were married. Um,
So you were 19 when you got married?
I just turned 20. We
Just
waited till
turned
I
20.
turned 20. Hmm.
And did knowing what you know now, it probably felt like rescue, right? From a somewhat
Absolutely. It
like
was
maybe not
absolutely.
chaotic life, but you were
Hmm.
just to feel special for one person, which you that's
Hmm.
impossible with seven kids to for your folks to be that intentional with any of you. It, it probably
Right.
felt
Yes.
like, wow, I get all the attention that we all crave, right?
Right. And I think too there were a lot of other aspects that played into that. My life experience modeled that men cheat. Like that was
Mm,
all I had seen modeled to me through all sorts of different life experiences. So I think I had this confidence that if I'm 20 years younger, there won't be that problem. Like I will forever be younger, more attractive. Like he won't want anybody else,
yeah.
if that makes sense.
Oh, makes complete sense.
Yes. Um, this sounds terrible too, but he was kind of a smaller in stature guy. And so there was a lot of physical abuse in my past. And so I also had this like confidence, like
You
I
could
can
beat
take
him
him.
up.
Yes. Like he'll never be able to bully me around and thump on me. Like I can take him. So, because that's the way
Oh,
we were raised. Like my brothers taught me how to fight. And so,
yeah.
yeah, I was
That's
like, no, I got
hilarious.
this. Yes. Yes.
Oh, not to
Yeah.
bring down the party because that's funny, but when you said you experienced that in the past, was it like when you were dating before this guy?
No, my dad grew up really, what I've learned now, like he grew up in a really abusive home, and his dad died actually when I think he was 12. So didn't
Mm,
have a lot of any really like male mentorship or anyone to really teach him how to be a good husband, a good dad. So there was a lot of physical abuse when we were
mm,
growing up. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
I'm
so,
sorry.
oh, it's, yeah. The cool thing is, though, like God redeems everything. And I think that's what's so beautiful. Like my dad is my hero. And so just, he found Jesus and did a complete 180 and
Wow,
I'll never forget the day he came and sat all of us kids down and just wept and cried and repented. And
wow,
like, yeah, just the
that's so
courage he
rare
had. Yes. And
for a grown man to find the humility because the
yeah,
shame of that, right?
yes.
That's easy one to sweep under the rug forever for sure and pretend like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
And for him
I
to do that, that's really incredible. I'm really
Yeah,
happy for
that,
you.
thank you. That's why he's my hero. He is so willing to own and acknowledge. And that's, it wasn't always that way, but once he found Jesus, he's just always been quick. He'll still call. Well, he's recently had a stroke, but even just like a year ago, he'd call me and say, "Hey, um, have you done this? Like, are you taking care of yourself? I didn't model that to you, and I'm really sorry. And I want to make sure that you're doing this." And I'd be like, "Yeah, Dad, I'm good." Like, so yeah, anytime he had a like a conviction of, "Oh, I didn't do that for my kids," he would call and apologize. And so
I
always
mean,
so grateful for that.
yeah, that's one thing to like sit everyone down and like, okay, I got that out of the way. Now we can move on.
Hmm.
And, but to come back and continually validate, I know in my story with my marriage, that's the thing that has put us back together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like literally last week, I have this old 1993 Dodge 12 valve Cummings truck, and we
So
had it before we got. I bought it when we were dating, so we've had it for like 19 years. When we were not doing good and moved back to Arizona, it didn't have a fifth wheel hitch in it for our horse trailer, and we had no money, and I took $500 out of our joint account and made this decision as the man of the house and all that crap, right? That I
yes.
wanted to go to a roping, and I had no way to haul the horses without that hitch because we didn't have a bumper pull. And last week I was hauling some stuff to the dump and I saw that hitch, and that was a reminder of me of another time that I ran over my wife and her
Mm.
heart with our
Yeah.
finances and my decision. And I invited her out to that truck
Mm.
and I said, "See that
Mm.
hitch right there? I'm so sorry.
Mm.
I'm so sorry
Yeah.
that I ran over you with this $500 turnover hitch. We didn't need a
Yeah.
turnover hitch. I could have got one for $150, but I had to get the big fancy one. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, that just reminds me of like what your dad is doing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
so important
Yeah.
to continue to go back and repair. And I can imagine for your heart just him continually humbling himself and going back and saying, I'm sorry about this thing or that thing. That's beautiful. I'm so glad that he got to that place. How redeeming.
It has been. Yeah. I'm so grateful. And it's taught me how to do that with my girls too, right? Like it really, what it's done for me, then I can turn around and do that for my kids when same thing. You things will pop up and you're like, oh man, I really screwed that up with my kids. And so to be able to pick up the phone or even just have a conversation with them and say, hey, I'm really sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
It's I think it's probably, and I pose this as a question to you. It's in the area of repairing relationship. I think it's probably near the top, if not at the top, of of something that we all can do to repair areas where we've messed up with our kids, with our spouses, with friends, with anyone, is
Mm-hmm.
to go back and sincerely validate how you hurt someone. Would
Mm-hmm.
you say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I love the word courage. Like, just love that. And I think it is because it takes so much courage to own and to share, like, hey, and admit, I screwed up. And but man, what that does on the opposite side is just it's just beautiful. And even if it doesn't, there's something about for me personally, there's something about my self-worth that gets repaired, even if I'm not met in that moment with forgiveness or reconciliation. There's still something inside of me that's like I respect myself more, and it yeah, it gives me more self-worth.
Yeah, when you keep your side of the street as clean as possible, you have no. This is like part two of that. I'm glad you brought this up because when I first started learning how to validate my wife's heart, expectation crept in.
Mm.
And then I was like, well, screw that. I'm not going to do that anymore because it wasn't met with, oh, I forgive you and it's all great and you're amazing.
Right.
That happened at first, a little bit. And then I
Mhm.
was like, oh, that felt nice. And so
Mhm.
I started doing it, but then I was getting bummed out because it wasn't met with my expectations weren't being met. And so again, I love that you brought that up because we shouldn't, because then it can turn into manipulation,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Like I just
Yeah.
want to get off the hook for this thing that I did, so I'm going to half-assed an
Yeah.
apology, and if you don't accept it, and then I'm not going to do it ever again. And
Yeah.
so I think that's an important part of it is acknowledging that you got to do it for the right reason, and it might
Mhm.
take some time for them to let that settle.
Yeah.
But to
For
your point,
sure.
just kind of keeping your side of the street as clean as you can and finding the humility and courage to do it anyway. That's
Yeah.
good.
The peace you can have when you lay your head down at night. That's me. I'm a big protect my peace gal. And yeah, that gives me
I
peace
love
to know
that.
I've owned my side of the street.
Yeah, well, I think peace is worth fighting for, which sounds like a contradiction maybe at face value, but I if you don't have peace, like if that's not the thing. I had a guy ask me,
Mhm.
what's at the end of all of this? Like going on the journey, the narrow path, like, and I've thought about it for probably 6 months. I'm like, I think it's peace. Because if you
Absolutely.
can operate from a place of peace, like
Mhm.
your lenses that you look at the world through, everything's different. I show up different to everything when when
Yes.
my soul is in a place of peace, right? Like I handle
Yeah.
conflict and my emotions aren't running me as much or at all.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
it is, I think the goal
Yes.
is to just have
Absolutely.
a soul at peace that then you can show up to anything and
Mhm.
be the best version of yourself when you show up with full of peace. Yeah, that's good.
Yes. Yeah. I think it takes being your authentic self too to have peace. Like I think they just go hand in hand. You
Yeah,
can't
and
have one without the other.
and finding out
Mhm.
that is the challenge. So
Sure.
who are you? Yeah. Um that was a fun sidebar. So you get married at 20
Yes. Yeah.
and I mean, I would imagine everything in your life changes because he's financially secure, which every woman is looking for, even subconsciously, right? Is security in not necessarily money, but a roof and groceries, and then you add on top of that like travel
Yes.
and the things that a poor girl with 6 siblings growing up has never got to experience. I mean,
Right.
that's got to be extremely life changing.
Yes, it was. It was just a whole other world. I really did. I entered just a whole different world. And so was taught how to dress, taught how to talk, how to eat, like all the things. Yes. And, but there was also a lot of manipulation in that, like a lot of control. And so I
Oh, I
never
believe
had
it.
access to the money. So everything was just, yeah, like what I was given, but then most of the time required a cost. And
Mm,
so there was just a lot of that that happened. There was I think too that young, not think I was still drinking a lot. He was an alcoholic. I wouldn't have called it that at the time. But in my naive mind, I thought we'll get married. And then, of course, if we have a baby, then he'll want to change. right? And
Yep.
he,
I know that story.
yeah, he'll grow up and then we'll live happily ever after. And so, um, plus too, I mean, at this time he was 40. And so really he had never had kids, so ready to have kids. And so we got pregnant really quick. Within the first 9 months of marriage, we were pregnant with our first daughter, and I was just super excited, just over the moon. Um, but quickly, infidelity set in, like just before we were married a year, like learning that there was still um, a
Oh,
lot
wow.
of extramarital affairs. And so learning about that and just,
While you were pregnant, you were learning about that?
I hadn't told him yet. So I knew I was pregnant with my oldest, and then actually walked in on a situation. And so was
Oh,
just like devastated and scared, mostly just scared, and just froze. Like I didn't know what to do and didn't feel like I could go home because my parents still had lots of kids to raise and they had their own um, chaos. And so just
you were
really just feeling,
trapped.
I felt so trapped, just felt absolutely stuck. And so really
Oh,
stayed in that place of just feeling stuck for, well, I was married 18 years. Yeah.
wow.
Yes.
That
Just,
and being
yeah.
so young and not really having any other option of, yeah, just feeling stuck and we're
Yeah.
about to bring a baby into this,
Yeah.
and probably
Yeah.
some false narrative of, like you said, because I laughed because that's what I even told myself was, well, when we get married, I'll stop drinking. And then it was like, well,
Yes.
when we have our first kid, of course I'll stop. What kind of maniac would still
Yes.
drink so much when they have a baby?
Yes.
And it didn't stop.
No. No. But yeah, so that just kind of continued on for 18 years. She was just though, and I share this like when I got saved when I was 12, but didn't really like understand like our the way we were raised was so incredibly legalistic, like, and I thought God was always mad at me. And then when I got saved, there was the redemption, like, oh, I can actually go to heaven. But I still didn't understand the love of the Father. Like I had no really concept of how much he loved us. And I still say the moment I held her, I can tell you she was 3 days old, and I can tell you what I was wearing, what she was wearing, where I was standing. And it was the first time I heard God's voice. And I just remember I loved her so much. I just wanted to eat her. Like I just couldn't get her
Yeah.
close enough. And just that, I think it was the first time I ever felt unconditional love.
Mm.
And I heard the Father's voice so clearly. And he said, if you love this baby this much, how much more do you think I love you? And I couldn't comprehend it. And I remember just responding, and I'll start crying thinking about it, is I want to believe you, but I commit to seeking it out because I could feel it. Like for the first time ever, I could feel it. And so that's really what started
Mm.
my journey of just chasing after that love.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to have that moment, but yet
Mm-hmm.
your circumstances still be what they are.
Yes.
I I think that's the tension where people bail a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times on God, is like we think that going on that journey, understanding that, then it's everything's going to be great, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, no. I
Mm-hmm.
I mean I don't, I've told this my story a million times, but I had that same experience for the first time, and 3 days later I had a gun in my mouth.
Mm.
So what do you do with that? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Sure.
how, because it's so hard for us to understand these conflicting emotions of, I
Mm-hmm.
experienced this that no one could ever take away from me, but yet my circumstances are so horrible that we
Yeah.
don't know what to do with that tension. And so I think a lot of times it's like we don't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to do with it clearly because I still thought I experienced this love and God in a way that I didn't know was possible growing up in the church, and it changed my life. And again, 3 days later, I was playing Russian roulette. So I love this conversation because it's not a one time. And sometimes you hear people that get radically saved and then like we change,
Right.
but our circumstances don't change. You had this beautiful encounter with a loving God
Yes.
with this little baby, but your circumstances were still the same.
No, yes. And I don't think they even got worse, right? Like it just gets worse. And I think it goes back to we don't know what we don't know. And
Exactly.
yeah, and I think there's that refinement in that soul. Like my spirit woke up, but my soul still had so much damage that needed repaired and just practical tools that I didn't have, right? And
Yeah, because
so
you're like
yeah.
21 when you had this baby. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's a lot to navigate with your home life situation.
Yes, it was. But yeah, I had another daughter at age 23, so they were 20 months apart, and they were just my world. Like the second one just brought as much joy as the first, and just dove into being a mama and loved every minute of it. They were like my little live dolls, honestly. Like
Yeah.
I loved being a mom. And so, but when they grow up and you're still living through them, that's not healthy either. And
No.
then they're uh, and then they're
Did
watching
you
me try to navigate.
yeah. Did you feel like having your daughters like made it okay to just jump into them and be able to get through the other hard things of marriage and all the things that were going on over there? Was that like the next rescue thing?
Absolutely.
Like that, I just start
Hmm.
seeing things in patterns. It's like, okay, I got to get out of
Hmm.
this situation, and here's the solution.
Hmm.
And then, oh, wait, this isn't what I thought it was going to be either. But
Right.
this, the next thing, that'll be the solution that'll help me get to
Right.
where I want to go and rescue me from what's going on in my life.
Yeah, and I think even rescuing them, it's that codependency part, right? Like that need to be needed. Oh, he doesn't need me, but they do. And so, as long as I'm needed by my kids, then I have
Mm,
purpose and value, then I have worth,
so
right?
good.
Yeah. And so, that's absolutely. And I had to go back and apologize to my kids once I realized, hey, I was,
Sure.
I was relying on you
I
guys to
really needed
define my
you.
self worth. Yeah,
Yeah.
I needed you to need me, and yeah, it was just like you said, you just repeat the unhealthy cycles until someone has the courage to do something different. So,
So, um, did anything ever change in the marriage as far as when you had kids? And was there ever any growth in that area? It was just kind of the same
yeah, it was
patterns
just
there
same
too.
pattern, right? And just I lived in such a place of denial too, um, because I had no tools and I had what I didn't. I felt so powerless and believed I
Mm.
was so powerless, which I think too just was the way I was raised. Um, and so, yeah, it goes back to didn't have an education,
Yeah. What are you going
didn't,
to do? You
right,
can't leave.
right, had no really work experience besides checking groceries in high school and working for him. And so there was just like no solution. And then also, too, by the time my girls were teens, we were my oldest was really big into showing horses. So we were living that life, traveling, which was really a saving grace because we got to travel all the time. Their dad stayed home. But there was always that threat, like, if you ever leave, I'll sell all the horses. Well, then I got to stay together so my kids have that, you know. And so there
You're
was just a
so
lot of,
trapped.
I felt so trapped. Yeah,
You weren't, but you,
I felt it. Yeah, I didn't
well,
know
yeah,
I was capable of something different.
yeah. When the rug can just get pulled out from underneath of you and that level of manipulation, like,
Yes.
what are you going to do? Hey, kids, we're going
Yeah.
to go live in an apartment. Mom's going to check groceries,
Yeah.
but all this is going away. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you really don't feel like you have any other choices.
Yeah. I did not feel like I did. Looking back now, I know I did,
For sure.
but I didn't know that then. Yeah. But I think during this time too, you know, God is just so faithful. Like He's always there, always. And so there was a group of ladies that we started a Bible study. And so I just started learning more and more about the love of the Father and grace and the empowerment of grace. Not that it's not only undeserving favor, but it's like gives you supernatural power, right? And empowers you to do things. So I just began to learn more and more about who I was and who He is. And it was a journey. Like we were in this Bible study 13 years. And then,
Wow.
yes, and they were just my safe place where I could share, you know, hard things that were happening in our home with a couple of them. Not everybody knew.
Sure.
We lived a real, he was the mayor of our small town. So we lived a
Oh, geez.
really public life, I guess. And so there was a ton of pretentiousness, a ton of, yeah, just pretending. So what the world saw looked complete, or what I perceived the world was seeing looked, it was completely different than what was actually happening inside the home. So, yeah, so I always had my kids, like, expected them to behave perfectly, look perfectly, all the things. Expected that of myself, and so there was not any vulnerability or transparency or anything like that. It was, and so
Yeah,
this
let's
group became my safe place. Yeah.
came your sisters that you could walk
Yes.
with. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that just I know that whole scenario so well. That's how we were when we
Mm-hmm.
managed that big indoor arena, and man, we everyone thought we were the walk of the town, you know. We had the
Mm-hmm.
best job in the whole valley, and we had our Bible study with our friends once a week, and we would fight all the way there and walk
Yeah.
in the door, and same at church, you know, just all the crap. It was like
Yeah.
such a lie. It was
Yeah.
such a lie, all of it.
Yeah. That
Fight all the
was,
way home.
yes. Yeah. And so, yeah. So the more I just learned about Jesus and who I was, then the more confidence I got. And then both of my girls were old enough to drive. And yeah, just there was another extramarital affair that happened. And I was like, I'm done. And I say it was that simple. I remember us too. We had a barn, covered arena, all the things, and went to my barn to put blankets on horses one night, and it was just bad. Like at home, it was just so bad. And both of my girls were gone that evening. And I remember, Jeremy, I was just sitting in a stall and just crying and just like, God, I just want peace so bad. Like I just wanted peace in my home so bad. And just that torn, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get out of this. I have no idea. And I'll never forget. He said again, he goes, my grace is sufficient if you stay. My grace is
Mm,
sufficient if you go. What do you want?
choice.
A choice.
Mm.
And Jeremy, that was the first time I really felt like I had choice. And I just remember saying, I want to go. And then he said, well, then go.
Hmm.
And the very next day, I had a friend call. She was a banker in the Tulsa area, and we were still in Western Oklahoma. And she called and she was like, hey, I had this client. They've bought this property. It's like 80 stalls, an indoor arena. They're needing somebody to come manage this facility. There's a place, a really cute apartment for whoever. She goes, do you know of anybody out there that would want to
Oh
take
yeah.
this job? And at that time, I was managing our own barn, just boarding horses and giving lessons and stuff. And I was like, I want to take the job. And she was just like, she
What?
kind of knew that she was like, okay. And that was on a Friday. By Tuesday, I had the job. And by the next week, I was packing up. And
How
just never
how
went
was
back.
that navigating that with your daughters, that conversation?
At that point, Jeremy, both of my girls, I don't think kids ever want their parents to divorce, but I think at that point, they were like, Mom, we got to do something different. Like, there's got to be a change. Like, they knew
Mm.
it was hard on them. Like, you think you're protecting your kids from stuff, and you're not. You're not. And so they were, I mean, it was heart wrenching. Moving them, I was not, I think, I don't think I know the hardest part was moving them from a life they had only like they had been there their whole lives in this little small town in their school with their friends and moving them across the state was just
Oh, so it was
devastating.
across the state. The new school,
Yeah.
new, and they're in high school.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Yeah.
that's tough. That
Yeah.
puts a lot of weight on that decision.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was,
that's hard.
yeah.
And they were
But I think
down. They got it.
the oldest, she was actually being homeschooled anyway because she was on the road so much showing horses. So
Mm.
it didn't affect her so much. My youngest was devastated. So she
Mhm.
came with me because I refused to leave them. And she came with me and started the school year in this huge school. Like they went from a class of
Oh,
50 to like a school of 350 in her class. And so
yeah.
she lasted about 3 months and then she went back to live with her dad. And um, I look back now, I didn't know what was happening at the time, but like had a major nervous breakdown. Like I just lost it because I didn't know how to protect her if she wasn't with me. And so just lost it. Um, and that was in late September. And so navigated that, which was just hard. Divorce is just hard. Like, I
Messy.
think
Even if
it's
it's good,
so messy.
it's messy.
Yeah. And this one wasn't easy, but it was just, yeah, it was so hard on them. But ended up moving back, which I think was the hardest. That was harder than leaving, was moving back to the
Her.
small town to raise
Wait,
her.
so
Hmm.
when she decided she wanted to go live with dad,
Yeah.
you decided to move back also. Because the
Yeah.
thought of her being that far away and
I couldn't do it.
was like not an option.
And so at this point, I had signed a prenup when I got married. That was another reason.
You're
Yeah.
20.
Yeah. Exactly. I didn't even know what it was. I remember the attorney trying to explain it to me before I signed it that day. But yeah, so when I left, I really left with nothing. I had a, he let me take the pickup and my trailer, and I took two horses with us. But and my KitchenAid mixer. For some reason, that was really important to me. But anyway,
And I'm taking this.
that's right.
You walked out the door, slammed
Yeah.
it, your mixer.
Yes. Um,
Oh, that's
and
hard.
yeah, so I think the hardest part was we had a conversation, and she, well, her dad knew he couldn't raise her. Like, he's like, I can't do this. And she, she and I missed each other. Like, I needed to be home with her, and she needed her mom. And so her dad agreed to pay me temporary alimony to move back, because the small town we lived in, I couldn't find a job out there to support us. And so moved in with my sister, and he ended up renovating the top of our barn as an apartment. And so once that was done, then yeah, I moved in up there until she graduated high school.
How long?
Yeah.
Wait, so you moved back to your old house and you were living in the barn in the apartment?
Yes. Our barn wasn't on the same property, thank God.
Oh, I was gonna
Yeah.
say that had to be awkward.
It was awkward enough. But
Yeah.
yeah, in the small town, it was awkward enough. But thank God the barn wasn't on the same property. Yeah. But
Wow.
yeah, just moving back to that, um, we had built it. And so it was a dream. Like it really was like a dream property for me. I had built my dream. And so it took so much courage to leave it. It wasn't the courage really to leave him. I know that sounds terrible. It was the courage to leave my life that I
Sure.
had built. And so, yeah, so then to come back was extremely humbling and
Well,
just,
y- yeah,
yeah.
because small towns, we all know how that
Mm-hmm.
works, and the rumor mills, and oh, she couldn't make it, and she
Mm-hmm.
had to come back with her tail between her legs. Probably that's probably
Absolutely.
some of the things that, as you're literally driving back,
Oh, yeah. It
but
was, yeah.
God, it's like driving back, that had to be tough too. After how liberating it probably felt to leave
Yes.
and empowering.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like the opposite feeling probably going back, but you had to.
I had to. I still would do it again.
Yeah.
Like, I had to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing that kids, it's like
Hmm.
until you have them, you don't understand what sacrifice really is
Hmm. For sure. Yeah.
and worth it. Like you said, how
Absolutely.
how long when you moved back into the barn before your youngest graduated from high school?
She was a sophomore, so 2 years. Yeah.
When she graduated, did you stay there?
Well, I met this really handsome, emotionally mature cowboy in the meantime. And so, yes. And so we actually got married in April before she graduated in May. And so we commuted back and forth when we first
How
got
far
married.
was
It was
how
about
far
a
was
2.5 hour drive. Yeah.
um I don't think Britain's ever shared that story. Where did you guys meet? At a horse
Oh,
show or something?
it was at a horse sale. Yes. We had a mutual friend. She was one of my best horse show friends. She was actually the one that got me the job that helped me
Oh
move.
yeah.
But he had known her since they were in junior high. Um,
Oh wow.
and I guess he reached out to her at some point whenever he decided he was ready to start dating again and said, "Hey, I always see you." She is like a social butterfly and just so much fun, like always a party when she's around. And so he reached out to her, like, "Do you have any girlfriends that are single?" And he was like, she said, "I have one, but I don't think she's ready." And I wasn't. And so she tried to set us up then. And I was like, no, no. And my girlfriends and I went to Ruidosa for the races and the horse sale for my 40th birthday, and walked into the sale barn. And I'll never forget, I saw his hat first, and I was like, that guy knows how to shape a hat. And then he turned around, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's that guy. Because our and then yeah, so had a little liquid courage. So my friends talked me into going up and saying hey, and I'll never forget it. He was yeah, working, and looked up. I said, hey, I think we have a mutual friend, introduced myself. And literally, he made eye contact for like 3 seconds, looked back down at his card, and I don't even remember what happened after that. I just remember I walked away and I told my friends the engagement wasn't more than like 10 seconds. And I walked away and I was like, that's the most intense person I have ever met in my entire life.
Especially in that work environment with
Oh,
him, working at that big sale. Yeah, I
yeah.
can imagine.
He was so intense. But yeah. So we
So you did the long distance thing for a while and engagement, it sounded like.
yeah, it took a while. Like it took that was in August. It took until after Thanksgiving before I finally agreed to go on a date. And then once we did, one thing I love about Britton Collum is he is intense. Whatever he does with a ton of intentionality, and it's going to be really intense. And I still wasn't convinced that I would ever get into another relationship. But the very first date, and he's like, I'd gone on one other date after my divorce before him, like, just wasn't going to do it. And he sat down in front of me, and within 5 minutes, he was like, what are your top three non negotiables in your next relationship? And I
Like, who are
remember,
you?
yes, but I also remember saying, like, if, and the finger came out, and I said, if there's ever another relationship, here are my top three non negotiables. And they aligned, they were exactly the same. And so, yeah, so we ended up having like a 7 hour date and just talking. And of course, he knows how to ask some really amazing questions that,
The
you
best,
know,
yeah.
yeah, pierce your heart. And so, yeah. And so then we dated for almost 2 years. And then before we got
Well,
married.
I would imagine um trust was something very hard for you to probably overcome. Men.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
just riddled through your whole story
Hmm.
is the opposite of what it looks like to be able to trust
Yeah.
anyone, let alone a man, right?
Absolutely. I often say it wasn't the question of if Britton would ever cheat on me, it was when. And I wasn't willing to go through that again. I just wasn't. And so, but I found myself like just absolutely crazy about this guy. Like I, never had experienced with a man before, just his integrity. Like I watched and he just walked in so much integrity. Um, so he had already done a ton of work on himself. Like he had gone through an emotional intelligence training, like, and I had not. Um, we both loved Jesus. Like we were both passionate about Jesus, but I was still had so many hurts that I hadn't worked through at all. So ended up um, kind of the same thing. Like one night, pretty much trying to break up with him. Like you have your shit together. I don't. And this isn't going to work. And
Did you feel like you weren't worthy of him at that point? Like I'm
absolutely.
too damaged.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
I think that
still had this crazy relationship going on with my ex was completely boundaryless, like just no boundaries. And he would, because he owned the barn, would come into my apartment when I wasn't there, and like just all the things that were still super toxic. And yeah, so I was like, this guy has two young kids. He doesn't need this mess. And absolutely, I didn't feel worthy. But he had been telling me about this program he had gone through. But every time he would try to or ask if I'd be interested, of course, I'd get defensive and say, am I your project or something? Like, I,
mm,
like, what are you trying to
sure.
do? Like, and so you're saying I'm broken, just get super defensive. And, but I remember that night, I was just so desperate for answers. Like there was just a situation that happened between my ex and one of my girls on her birthday, and it was just so unbelievably toxic, and the damage it was doing to my kids. And I was just desperate. I was like, I have no tools to navigate this. I have no idea how to navigate this kind of hurt. And so I actually got online, signed up for the program that he had gone through, just desperate for answers. They asked for a referral. I put him. I didn't know that they would contact him. So,
Because you didn't tell him you were going to do it.
no, I didn't tell him at all. I didn't want him any. I didn't want him to be a part of the process. I
Sure.
just didn't because of
No,
that trust thing.
yeah, and
Yeah,
control and all the other. Yeah.
absolutely. And so, yeah, so he reached out a couple of days later and he was like, is there anything you want to share with me? And I was like, no. But anyway, so went through that program and got the healing I was desperate for. And it was the first time that I think I could answer the question after 6 months. I mean, it's intense. And after 6 months, I could answer the question of, even if he was ever to cheat on me, would I still be okay with me? And when I could answer, yeah, that that doesn't get to define me anymore,
Hmm.
then I knew I was okay to move forward. Yeah. But I say this often, and so grateful for that man. He had to repair a lot of trust that he didn't cause. And so grateful for the way he has so patiently and gently navigated my story, and just the healing I've gotten from the way he shows up for me.
Mm.
It's taught me so much about covenant, what true covenant looks like, which helps me understand the Father even more.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think that I just love your story so much, and that it's so hopeful that I think that we get to a place of hopelessness often that it it's the definition of hopeless. Like there's no way out of this
Mm-hmm.
because our emotions, we do not know what to do with them. We don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to navigate them. So then, in comes all the coping mechanisms,
Right.
whatever they may be, because those emotions, they got to come out. They're
Yeah.
going to show up. And when you get to the
Absolutely.
place that you did of like, I can't take this anymore,
Mm-hmm.
because again, you're just feeling trapped by your emotions. We all are, right? Of like,
Absolutely.
I don't know what I'm going to do with any of this.
No.
That we get almost desperate enough that we're like, I'll try it. I don't,
Yeah.
and I think that's what I resonate with in your stories. That's how I felt of like, well, these 27,000 other things I've tried to do to escape this
Mm-hmm.
unprocessed pain, none of them have worked.
Right.
So maybe I'll stop and go the other way. And that's
Mm-hmm.
always the scariest way, the
Always.
riskiest, most costly way
Yeah.
of like, well, and that's kind of where I feel like and I think others get to the end of, and I don't hear any of this in your story, but like any victimhood is like, maybe I just need to look at my own stuff and what I have any control over, because we don't have control over anyone else, right?
Yeah. Oh,
And
I
if we
was,
can,
yeah, absolutely. But I played the victim. That was my go to card. Like,
it was.
oh, absolutely. I was
Well,
so, I was just a doormat, a complete doormat, just such a
which is
victim.
so unempowering, right? When we're in a
Absolutely.
state of victimhood, we've given away all of our power. We have no power at all, and it's so counter of what we think is going to happen when we start taking accountability to, again, our side of the street,
Yeah. I think
right?
too, what I learned is that, um, well, I've learned so much, but I think in that powerless victim part, we actually like playing the victim. We It's a form of manipulation too. Like it's just we're trying to get control. It just looks completely different than the person that we're blaming as being the controlling one. When really we're controlling it too. It just looks really passive instead of aggressive. And so once I realized I'm playing just as many games as the person that looks controlling,
Mm,
you know,
come on.
then it's like, okay, I'm have a much larger role to play in this than I'm acknowledging and owning. And I do want to say though, like in case there are women watching that are being physically abused, like I understand, like there's a part that there really is a concern, like a life threat concern,
No.
and but there's still hope out there, right? There's still a
Yeah.
resource. We can get you to a safe place, and there's still hope.
Yeah.
And
Get out.
get out. Yeah. And there's still ways to make that happen. But in my situation, it wasn't physical abuse. It was a lot of financial abuse, emotional abuse. Like I said, just a lot of verbal abuse,
Manipulation.
so much manipulation. But when I learned I was doing the same thing, it just looked really passive. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really important, because the again, the opposite of being a victim is being powerful, and that you have power to make choices and decisions for
Yes.
yourself
Yeah.
and for your children. But
Absolutely.
what I think a lot of times what we don't like is when we want to be powerful and we want to make powerful choices and be have some control in our life, but we don't want to pay the consequences of that.
Right. It's those short term
Being
feel good.
empowered, yeah, being empowered means you're going to have to sacrifice more. You're going to have to do things that you maybe don't want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're
Yeah.
going to
We
have to
call it.
go back out and get a job, and you're going to have to
Yes.
not
Maybe
go
sell
on
the
trips
horses.
anymore.
Yeah. Don't, you may
Yeah,
have to leave your horse show community and all those things. Yeah.
yeah, so that's where I think it gets tricky for people, is like, and that is that why we like to stay in the victimhood role, is because we don't want to pay the price to be powerful.
Absolutely. I think we call it the short term feel good payoff, but it has a
Mm,
long term consequence, right?
that's really good.
So my short term feel good payoff was, yeah, I got cared for financially. I got to travel and see the world. My girls got to show really amazing horses, right? And yeah, I got to look good and buy cool clothes and drive a nice car, and I got to stay home with my kids, which I'm super grateful for. But long term consequence was, again, no peace, no joy, no self worth, right? My kids, the consequences of my kids really what I think drove me to leave, do something different.
I know when Mary decided to leave me, um, she had a full time writing job 5 days a week. She was going to night school to get her teaching degree, and she had an online job.
Mm, wow.
And we had a 2, 3 year old at home
Wow.
by herself. And so just the community of people of racing to drop him off to preschool, to go do her writing job, to get back to
Mhm.
take him to the friend's house so that she could do her other job and then do the night school. But she empowered herself. She wasn't going to be the victim anymore. And she did what it took at a great consequence. And like you said, there was no short term relief
Mm-mm.
in that. I mean,
Mm-mm.
it's the long game. This journey, what I tell people all the time, even walking with God, it's a long game. It's not the short game.
No. But I think that's anything worth doing is a long game.
Anything.
Yeah.
If you're showing horses or
Right.
anything that has any lasting value or adds to your life, it's the long game.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all get so short sighted
Yeah.
that we get frustrated and we quit.
Yeah.
We give up. We're like, it's not worth it. And then it's right back into victim mode.
Yeah.
Like, I have no choices. Well, you do. You just don't want the consequences that comes with
Right.
the choice to empower yourself.
Yeah.
But also, I think I'd like to hear what you think with the advantage of hindsight, like modeling that to your girls, because I think this is an important conversation where I think mothers that are in your situation right now,
Mm-hmm.
like how important is it to model strength, because we're always modeling to our kids, right? I don't care
Always.
how old they are
Yeah.
or what our situation is even for you to make these hard choices, like you're not showing your daughters what it looks like to stay in victimhood.
Yes. I think my oldest daughter is like extremely strong willed and brilliant. Both of them are. And they both are just so gritty. Anyway, they're just remarkable girls. But I remember my oldest, and she's very blunt and candid. And she was about 15. And I'll never forget, she looked at me and she goes, "Mom, I love you. I do not respect you." And I remember, Jeremy, it was like a donkey kick in my gut, just like, oh my word. And so to have them, and I love what you said, kids do what we do, they don't do what we say. Kids are watching. And so that became almost after that moment, like, what am I teaching my girls? What are they seeing? And so, really, that became kind of honestly, I think I got help more for them in the beginning than I did for me.
Mm.
Like, I got to do something different for my kids, especially as daughters, and what I've shown them. And then it became more about, no, I want to do this for myself too. But I think the beauty in that is them watching my journey. And it wasn't easy. Like, when you learn your self worth and you start setting boundaries, um,
People don't like
they
it.
don't like it. And they didn't like it at first. They didn't like it at all. It was, and I'm going to be really honest, I lost a lot of friends, even in the horse show world. They didn't like it. They didn't understand the choices I was making to take care of myself, to get myself healthy. I'll never forget missing a horse show for one of my self help trainings, and just the repercussions I got from moms. Like, I can't believe you didn't show up for your kid. Like,
Mm.
when in all honesty, I was trying to show up for my kid. It just looked different. I was fighting for me and for her, just not on a horse show, just not at a horse show. So,
I get the long game.
yeah. And so just to hear them now, like they, yeah, they have thanked me. Like to hear them sit down with me in Britain and thank us for modeling what a healthy marriage looks like there's no greater reward than to see. And they were teens. They were like 16 and 18 when we were walking out this journey. And so to see them gain the self-worth and even our oldest is married, and to see the man she chose to marry, and and the younger one, or my youngest, just, yeah, her choose different for her life, like her expectations of who she's going to settle with. It's, yeah, so grateful. It's worth it.
Yeah, it is. I really think, and I say big things all the time. I understand that, but I really think this is how we change the planet is by
Absolutely.
modeling to our kids what does a healthy marriage look like, even in the midst of divorce and you finding yourself and putting your mask on first, which looks selfish at times to the outside world.
Yes.
Of like, no, but you can't you can't give away what you don't have.
Right.
And if you don't have peace and you don't have confidence and you don't have strength and you're not
Mhm.
empowered, you can't give that to your daughters to show them, no,
Yeah.
I made choices when I was really young that have affected all of us, but I got to go figure this out
Right.
because it does. This is why women settle for less all the time.
Hmm.
It's because, well, this is what mom and dad did, and this is what I'm worth.
Right.
This is the type of man that I deserve.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's subconscious, and kiddos don't understand it even when they get into their 20s
Hmm.
and 30s, right? But I think that, yeah, divorce is messy and ugly, and it's not great.
No.
But it is like your story. It is beauty for ashes. It is, no, this can
Mhm.
be turned around, and I can show my girls what a strong, empowered woman looks like. It's
Yeah.
going to take some time, but now again, you have the advantage of hindsight.
Hmm.
And even if our kids don't like us, because there's this switch from respect to like I love you, mom, but I don't respect you.
Hmm.
There's a season where I don't know if I love you, but I don't like you, but you're
Hmm.
growing in respect.
Right.
Your daughter started respecting you.
Hmm.
And then it can turn back to now what it is now of like, oh, you showed us the way.
Yeah.
You showed us what we're capable of and what a strong woman looks like in a healthy covenant marriage.
Yeah.
And that's the model. It's my point is it's not too late.
No, not at all.
For anyone listening to this, even if your kids are out of the house, it's not too late. We're always modeling to our kids till the day we die, just like your dad modeled with you. He
Absolutely.
showed you firsthand what it looks like to go back and clean up messes with your daughters
Yeah.
and go back and validate choices that you made in the midst of your heartache and trying to figure it out, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
So it's never too late.
No, I think it just takes somebody having the courage to take the steps to do it. And it takes community. Like you can't, I love, you can't do this on your own. You can't heal on your own. We weren't created to, and it's impossible. It takes community. It takes people partnering with you. Yeah.
I know I love that. Like, you know, people get religious and like, oh, I don't need community. I just need God. And I'm like, have you read your Bible?
Right.
Like, there's God and Adam cruising around the garden. Adam is with God,
Yeah.
like literally. And what does God say? It's not good for man to be alone.
Mhm.
He needs a partner.
Yeah.
So we're so in our DNA, we're so created for community.
Yes.
And I get isolation. I've been in isolation. I understand how we get there and why, because we get hurt and we don't trust people.
Right.
Like it would have been easy for you to turn into cat lady
Yeah.
and have your horses
I
and be
yeah, I was
the
turning
rest of your life.
yeah, I was turning into horse lady. The more the merrier. I would laugh about that. Like I like horses more than people, right? Like but yeah, we weren't created for that. No.
I get it. When people say that, I used to have emotions towards it, but I have compassion. Like I get it's
Mhm.
because dogs and people and horses, I mean, they don't hurt us like people do.
Right. Right.
And I love that they can be part of our healing journey, which
Mhm.
I know they have been for me and you and
Mhm.
Britain and
For
so many
sure.
people, but it's not instead of relationship.
No.
Because you can't get healed. Like if we all have our people wounds and hurt, horses can't heal that.
No.
People can,
Yeah.
community can, the right one. But as we go on the journey, and like you have, guess what? My community isn't the same community it used to be.
Oh no. It's completely different. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's healthy and
Yeah.
boundaries and accountability, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it changes and seasons change, and
Mhm.
yeah, I love that. I love this conversation around your daughters and modeling because I think it's we can go do great things
Mhm.
in our lives. I don't know that there's anything more important than that, though.
Yeah. No.
That's our legacy. It's not money.
Right.
It's not working hard to. I've worked for a lot of wealthy people, like some of the wealthiest people in this country,
Mhm.
and they're going to leave their kids a ton of money and it's not good.
Mm-mm. No.
It's like, what is legacy? It's not money.
No. Not at all.
I don't care to leave my kids much of that at all, but what we're talking about is what the next generation and the next generation we get to leave them at that higher place, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My oldest, they're expecting their first baby any day, and it's a girl. And just even thinking about, like you were talking about, how generations will be different. The generation of women will be different because of the way God showed up and taught me, and I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful. And one of my favorite sayings or quotes is, let our ceiling be our children's floor.
Yep.
Like
I
this,
love that one.
yeah, this grandbaby's
What a
going to
picture.
do far better things. But
I'm excited for you to have this grandchild so I can call Britton grandpa.
I know,
I
isn't that
can't
fun?
wait.
Oh, I love it too. It's so fun. Yeah.
So I love how when people say yes to the journey like you did
Mm.
many years ago. Wait, how long have you and Britton been married? I know this, but
Yeah, we've been married 8 years.
yeah. So in the last decade, your life has the woman that I'm looking back at right now is not even close to the same woman you were a decade ago, right?
Not even close. No. No, not even. I think even like preparing for like to have this conversation, I have to be intentional about going back to where was I, because it's so night and day different. I mean, my true authentic self is still there, right? Because I don't think, yeah, I think we're always who God created us to be. It just gets buried under a lot of BS. And so we can't see who we truly are. But I know I was created a strong, courageous, worthy little person, right? Just life experiences told me different. And so now I just feel like I'm getting to operate out of the way God really created me to be. And so, yeah, but I was such a doormat and no, completely voiceless, thought I was powerless and
And
victim.
you're not.
Yeah, played the victim all the time.
I love that. I think people think when they go on this journey that they're not going to get to it's, especially when I talk to people who struggle with addiction. And for me, the fear of giving that up was so kept me in it because I'm like, I'm going to lose everything, fun, friends, all that. And that did happen for a season.
Mhm.
But to your point, like this healthy version of ourselves gets to go do the same things we're always created to do.
Yes. It's even better. Like, it's
Way
just
better.
so much better. Like I said, to lay down at night and just feel that peace. Like, I hope I never get tired of that. Like, just feeling the
I don't
peace.
think we do.
Yeah. And I think true joy is connected to peace. And so when we have that peace and we can experience true joy, not moments of happiness, but true joy. And I think that's, yeah, money can't buy that.
It can't. I've seen people try it. I've tried it.
Mm, yeah, me too.
And it's the short game for sure.
Yeah,
Instant temporary gratification.
yeah,
I'd like to kind of transition a little bit into what you're up to now.
yeah,
You're just coming out of a crazy season of working with incarcerated women,
yes.
and I can't even begin to imagine on a day to day basis what that's like. For one, could you ever even imagine that person you were 10 years ago fighting, sitting with women who are incarcerated in it was a federal
No, it
penitentiary
was state.
state?
It's the only state prison, female prison in Oklahoma. So it's rather large. And Oklahoma, up until the last couple of years, has had the highest incarcerated per capita for women in the world.
Wow.
Yeah, Oklahoma's
What
brutal on
attributes
women.
that?
Excessive sentencing. A couple things like Oklahoma is just really hard on women. And so a lot of women, once you get incarcerated, you don't get out for like 25 years. Another, Oklahoma has a law, failure to protect. So oftentimes, if you have a mom that is in a toxic relationship and their child gets hurt, she doesn't even have to be present. It's just if she left the child with somebody that inflicted the harm, she gets sentenced. Oftentimes more, yeah, oftentimes she will do more time than the person that actually inflicted the crime on the child.
That that's insane.
Yes, it's
So
heartbreaking. That's what it is.
you drop your kid off at your sister's house,
Right,
and in a bad situation, something happens,
right.
and you could go to prison for that.
Yep,
Wow.
yeah. So those are a couple of, yeah. And Oklahoma is
Factors.
just, it's statistically isn't one of the most, yeah, nothing to brag about when it comes to mental health and addiction and trauma. ACE scores, adverse childhood experiences in Oklahoma is, I think we're also the highest in the nation, which is insane. So
And that season of your life has just recently come to its finality, right?
it has, yes. I've been a certified life coach for, I guess, 7 years. I got my life coach certification right after Britton and I got married. And then did independent coaching for 5 years and just really felt called into prison ministry. So joined with a ministry, prison fellowship, which is just an incredible, they're doing incredible work across the nation. And so spent the last 3 years, yeah, in prison full time. So would go in 8 to 5, Monday through Thursday, and just work with women that just have experienced so much trauma. 95%, I would say it's closer to 99% of women that are incarcerated have experienced some really major trauma somewhere in their life. That just same thing, they didn't have resources to get help and healing, and hurt people when you don't learn to heal and you don't have the opportunity to heal. So, but really felt like that season was, coming to a close. So entering back into the independent coaching, and excited for the next season to do some ministry, even with Britton and coaching with him. We do some marriage retreats and things like that. So excited to do that again.
Yeah, I when I kind of knew what was going on in that with that, and when Britton texted me that season had ended, I felt a lot of compassion for you, because I know that wasn't an easy choice for you, because how deeply you love that space, and I mean, just your heart to want to jump into that system and sit in that much trauma. Your capacity for compassion is so enormous. But I also was a little bit excited because with Wild Courage, we've always wanted to do like some marriage stuff. And also, like I mentioned earlier, like I get so much feedback from women of like, when's there going to be a women's Wild Courage, and when are we going to do stuff for women? And then to kind of see some of the things you're up to that's not Wild Courage, like branded or affiliated really, but just in partnering with you and as a resource for the gals that listen to this podcast. And I'm so excited for you to share with everyone what's coming up and what you're doing, which I just think is so incredible. So why don't you go ahead and share?
Yeah.
And it's so on brand for Wild Courage, but I love what you're doing with Rob and Brenda and
Oh,
Non-Typical Outfitters. So share with us
yes.
what's coming up.
Well, I'm just so excited. Britton, he's gotten to experience, the Wyoming mountains with Rob and Brenda before. And so he convinced me it wasn't hard to join him. And we did a little family camp, and yeah, it was just absolutely incredible. And so when we got back from, that experience, Rob and Britton and I sat down and just started brainstorming. And so, yes, I'm going to host a women's retreat and partner with Non-Typical Outfitters, which Rob is they just do it right. I mean, I had no grid on what to expect. And um, so I told Britton we ate way better there than we do at home. Like
Oh,
they just
yeah.
do it incredible. So we're going to partner. Yeah, I'm going to partner with Non-Typical Outfitters with Rob and Britton and do a women's retreat. It's September 5th through the 8th, I believe, are the dates. And um, yeah, and then we'll just do some horseback riding in the mountains and some coaching processes in the morning and in the evening. And really, just the heart of it is for women just to realize how powerful they are. But I see that often pendulum swing to I am woman, hear me roar. And I don't think that's what this is really about. This is more about
Yeah.
being your true authentic self of, yeah, I love, and I'm, thank you for the compassion part. I think women do carry so much compassion. And I think for me, I thought compassion was a weakness, and to learn that no, compassion is my strength, and learn really how to use that as a strength and not a weakness. And so, yeah, just I'm always about empowering women just to be the best versions of themselves, just for the same reason, so we can keep raising strong daughters and have strong families, so we can have strong
That's
communities.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get to speak a little bit to um, where you're going, because I've been there a half a dozen times probably, and I'm so excited for you. And you're right, Rob does camp right.
Yeah.
It's rustic for sure, but like I've been in a lot of hunting camps, and to have like wood floors and like
Yeah.
stoves in every tent, and
Yeah.
like you're roughing it, and there's no cell phone service, which I love. And
Love.
I found it interesting, and I told Rob this the first time I went up there. Not having my cell phone, I literally felt like all my senses got stronger.
Hmm.
Like I can't explain it other than just that. I felt like there's something beautiful about not being having connection to this
Yeah.
technology, that your soul wakes up, your vision clears, food tastes better, like literally like all my senses
Yeah.
were awakened being up there, and they do everything so well,
Mhm.
Rob and his team, with hosting. And I love Rob's heart for partnering with you, and his generosity, him and Brenda
Mhm.
saying yes to this. So I think it's going to be an amazing time, and they have the best mountain horses, and it's going to be, I'm so excited for you and for getting to go do that. And so um how can people find out more about this? How can they reach out to you? Do you have like an email address or anything you want to
I do.
give out? And
Yeah.
I also, just so everyone knows, I will put all this in the show notes on the podcast. So
So,
don't feel like you got to scramble to write it down. But
yeah. When I create,
if you're interested in this, how can they find out more?
yeah, absolutely. I have a website,
Come on.
courageouscommitments.com, and that has been up for a few years. But I think I'm almost certain this event's on there. And then my email address is the number two, life relationship coach at gmail.com. And so they can
That's awesome.
reach me either way. Mhm.
Outside of this event in Wyoming, are you booking to take any clients on this time?
Absolutely. Yes. So we're right at the beginning of this transition, but yes, I'm going to go back to just full time coaching. So I have a handful of clients, but absolutely we'll be building that up and looking to support more women outside of prison. And so excited for the journey ahead. Yes.
Yeah. So again, if any of you gals are listening, Britton is on our resource page, and we have sent so many guys to him, and what you guys offer and carry is so incredible.
Mm,
And we love what you guys are doing. And so if you have any questions about this, reach out to Millie. She's amazing, as you already can tell.
oh,
And I just thank you so much for your yes to my friend Britton and my
mm,
brother, and for coming on here and sharing with us your story. It's so powerful. I want to give you just a little space. Um, what do you say to the gal that's in the midst of what you were going through in that season, who's listening to this and is feeling trapped? And what do you say to her?
that she's much more powerful than she knows she is, and that she's capable of far more than she can even comprehend in this moment, and that there is help out there, and there's no judgment, like no judgment. Um, yeah, like there are safe people that sincerely want to help.
Yeah, you're worthy.
They're so worthy,
You're worth it.
so
Yeah.
worth it, so worth it. Yeah. I think too,
That,
I'll ask mamas like if they have babies or toddlers or little, any kid, any age, just look at their face and what are they worth? And if you would want this for them. And if the answer is no, you don't want this same situation for them, then you're worth more than that too.
that's so good. And again, I think you mentioned it, but the pendulum has swung over too far a little bit
Mm-hmm.
with some of the empowerment language and verbiage around this. we're not saying leave your husbands. If you're in an abusive situation, get out.
Absolutely.
Get get out. But maybe say yes to the journey and see what can change, because my life and my marriage of saying yes to this journey, I have the most amazing marriage.
Yeah.
Mary and I do now. And
Mhm.
it took a decade to get to where we are today.
Yeah.
But neither one of us gave up, and neither one of us quit each other, even when it looked like it was never going to be fixable.
Hmm.
And she needed to get away. I wasn't safe, not physically, but I was not safe for her. I was so manipulative and I not trustworthy.
Yeah.
And for 4 years, she got her own space and moved out and moved away. And from a safe distance, watched me change.
Hmm.
And I again say that just to give hope that it doesn't mean that it's forever and there's a finality to going on the journey.
Oh,
Sometimes it
yeah.
just takes time.
Absolutely. And part of the story I didn't share, like once I began to realize, like slowly begin to just know who I was, slowly, like I fought for my marriage, honestly, like fasted, prayed, like interceded, like I wanted my family to stay together. It was just a clear in that moment, like I shared, God gave me the power of choice. Like it's time for you to choose and you get to choose. And one part of the story I didn't share was one of the girls that I was in Bible study with. Her life was her marriage. She was experiencing a lot of the exact same things. There was some drug abuse and some infidelity, and so she truly believed in her heart that God was calling her to stay and fight for her marriage. And she did. And now her and her husband have this beautiful marriage. Right.
Come
That
on.
is restored and redeemed. And so yeah, for exactly. I don't want anyone to walk away from this saying divorce is the answer. Divorce, to your point, like Brittany and I have such a beauty from ashes story, but it's still um, what our children are going to walk out because of divorce. It's rough. It's rough. Blending families is hard. It's really hard. And so I wouldn't trade any of my story for anything else. But Britton and I think is kind of the fun thing about us. Like we do marriage retreats because we're still for marriage. Like if you can make it work, make it work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to that point, I'm so glad that if you ask Mary why she stayed, God never released her from
Right.
me, even though there were divorce papers on the table
Yeah.
for years.
Yes.
She wanted nothing to do with me, and rightfully so.
Hmm.
But I'm so glad. If you anyone that asks her why didn't you pull the trigger on divorce, she was like, God didn't release me.
Yeah.
And could you imagine if she wasn't obedient to that
Hmm.
still small voice?
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't be here.
Right.
I don't know what would have happened. So
Yeah.
that's good. Well, again, Millie, thank you so much for
Oh, thank
taking the
you.
time to do this. And I just I'm so excited for you and Britain and all that the lives that you're changing and are going to continue
Oh,
to
thank
do.
you.
And so I'm stoked for your adventure in the wilderness. That's going to be amazing. So
Thank
go check her out, guys.
you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Millie.
Jeremy.